Slava, why don't you tell us about your second trip to the US?
Yeah, I might as well do that. Oh, hey guys. Well, since the first video, I thought I might do another video of me coming back to the US in 2003. So let's talk about that. Came back from the first trip to Russia. I did another year in college, and the next summer I was very excited to go to the US again. And I had no problem getting the job offers because I already took care of that problem. The guys at the Country Candy Kitchen made them for me, so I had all the paperwork ready, no problem, and took a plane ticket. And in June of 2003, I was at JFK in New York at the international airport. Now, my initial plan was to go directly to Tennessee and continue working at the places that I worked at, but then I've met a bunch of Russian guys and girls who were like, "Where you going?" I'm like, "Tennessee." They're like, "Oh no, that's boring. Let's go with us to Ocean City, Maryland." I had no idea where Ocean City, Maryland was, but they seemed like nice guys, and they had a van waiting for them. So we all hopped in, and we were on our way to Ocean City, Maryland. The summer started not so favorably for that place because it had been raining all the time, and jobs were so scarce. And I was going, Ocean City is basically like a mini version of Miami, Florida. Miami Beach, Florida. It's like a huge city along the coast, and there's the main street, and you have tons of restaurants and hotels and whatnot. So I was going from one place to another trying to get a job, and there were none. Nobody was hiring. Also, there were so many Russians, so many Polish people that the competition was just insane. And I was looking for work, and the only thing that I could find was a place in housekeeping, which I never intended to do, and I hated that kind of job. And also I got the job through a Polish employment agent who was a crooked type of personality. And one time he was giving me a ride to work. He was driving an Audi, a brand new Audi A8, and he was drinking coffee. And at the time, I was just not used to the habit of drinking coffee in the morning. I'm like, "Why don't you drive a manual?" He's like, "Slava, I like comfort, and I like drinking my coffee in the morning." And I'm like, okay, the dude's got a soft spot for luxury, I understand. So he got a bunch of money like doing this middleman work. Okay, but the reason I said crooked is because I worked for 2 weeks in the housekeeping at that hotel, and he didn't want to pay me for the second week because I decided to quit. But I wasn't worried too much because I knew I was in America, and I knew that he would have to pay me because I worked for that hotel, and that I would call them directly. And we had a manager who was the head of the staff, and a black guy, very friendly dude. And so I called him and said, "Hey, this Polish middleman, Eric, what's his name?" I said, "He doesn't want to pay me." And so the manager guy, he said, "Okay, Slava, don't worry. Tonight you're going to receive your money. Whatever we owe you, you're going to get that." And 30 minutes passed, and this Eric guy calls me like, "Hey, Slava, how would you want this money to be wired?" I said, "Well," I think it was Western Digital at the time. So he sent me the remaining, I don't know, $150 or $200. So that's how it ended. I packed my bags, and I was on my way to Tennessee again. At night, we were going through Baltimore, and it was raining heavily. And the bus, I think, was speeding a little bit, and at some point it was going downhill, and it started swerving. And downhill, you can see a gas station. And people started panicking, and so was I. I was like, "Oh, this is how my life is going to come to an end, right?" Just a bus smashing into a gas station, everything explodes like in Hollywood movies. I was like, "Oh my God, this can't be right." But eventually he was able to get back into the lane, and I safely arrived in Tennessee. I got a cab for $50 from Knoxville to Pigeon Forge again, and there I was, stepping out of the taxi. It was warmer, it was more humid, and it felt like home. I was back in Tennessee. I was happy. It just felt the right thing to do. Everybody was friendly again, and I didn't feel outclassed. I got my job at Golden Corral back. I started working as a server again, and I went to see all of my friends. I want to briefly touch on the subject of those employment agencies that were ubiquitous in the U.S. in the early 2000s, and I saw Polish guys doing that, Russian guys doing that. So even in Pigeon Forge, like the previous year, I didn't tell you that in the first video, but this is what happened. So there were a few people from Russia having this employment agency, and they would employ people undocumented people who came on tourist visas or were just in the country illegally, but they needed jobs. So they would employ them, and then they would have contracts with restaurants and hotels and other companies employing these guys. So say if a restaurant paid $8 an hour, they would only give $6 an hour to the person working for them. So they would have this difference that they would put in their pocket. And having like hundreds of people working for them, this amounted to a lot of money. And then something happened that caught everybody off guard. So these guys running this employment agency in Pigeon Forge in Gatlinburg, they had an argument apparently, and one of the guys killed his associates. It was a guy and a girl. And it caught everybody off guard. Like, I'm walking to my restaurant the next morning and everybody's like, "Hey, Slava, did you hear about the Russian mafia in town? And, this murder?" And they couldn't figure out what happened because the bodies were gone. The bodies were not there. And the guy who committed the crime, he was not there either. So it was like a huge mystery. But they knew they were Russian, so it was just a rumor that, okay, Russian mafia is here, committing crimes. Everybody was terrified. And I didn't learn much about this situation for another 10 years. And it was when I was back in Russia that I was just curious to find out if anything came out of that. So I logged into the internet and I'm like trying to search for some news articles about that murder. And what it turned out that the murder's been solved. And what happened was this guy, he killed a guy and a girl who he was working with in Gatlinburg. He hid their bodies somewhere in the Smoky Mountains along the highway. And then he moved to, I think it was New Jersey. He got a job at a gas station. Then he ended up robbing the gas station for another $8,000. And that's when he fled back to Russia. And the U.S. police had been building all that evidence and about this case, and then they contacted the Russian law enforcement, and this was actually a pretty good example of fruitful cooperation between the two countries. The Russians took it seriously. They caught the guy. At the time, he was living in Khimki, which is part of Moscow, and he was sentenced, I think, to 10 years or 20 years in jail. I think he's still doing his time. So that's how this whole thing ended. And, I was there during that time when this murder occurred. Luckily, I wasn't working for them, so I had nothing to do with them. All right, enough of the gruesome and tragic stuff. Let's talk about some funny and crazy stuff, right? So I was working as a server at Golden Corral, and I remember one night, to me, it was like beyond understanding. All the staff were outside, just ready to get into our cars and leave, and somebody just hit a joint of marijuana and everybody was like passing it around, like managers and servers and everybody else. To me was like, oh my god, that's off the hook. Also, some of the girls that I worked with, the American ones, they were pretty wild as well. This one girl, she's like, "Hey, do you want to go for a ride?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And she had a Chrysler Submarine, a nice car at the time, and with a moon roof. And we're driving at night, some country roads, right? And she had a bottle of six-pack of beer. She's drinking, driving, and then she's like, "You want to see a local tradition?" I'm like, "Sure." So she grabs an empty bottle and she smashes it while she's driving into the road sign. And she's like, "You should do that." And so it was, that's the kind of fun she had in mind. Oh, another curious thing was when this other girl, she's like, "Hey, do you want to go have fun tonight?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?" We ended up driving out of town, and we're stepping in this trailer, and I'm walking in, and I see that everybody's there is like a lot of black dudes, and this one guy confronts me. He's like, "Hey, first of all, like, do you have anything to do with the police?" And I'm like, "All right, I guess these guys are up to no good." I said, "No, I don't have anything to do with the police." He's like, "All right, you cool then. So be a guest at my house, like do whatever you want to do." But I didn't like it, man. I honestly felt threatened because there was a rifle sitting on the couch, and I could feel these guys were up to no good. Maybe they were drug dealers. I don't know. I know some of them were smoking crack and stuff, And so it also got me really scared when there was some kind of an altercation outside. I heard people screaming, and I was like, okay, if stuff goes down, I'll be the first one to be shot in the head, right? And then and there, I was like, I should not put myself in dangerous situations like this. I should be more careful. Like, it's not worth it to put your life on the line like that. But luckily, everything ended peacefully, and those guys are all right. But I just think they're up to no good, and they were involved in some criminal activities. Another story that I'm about to tell you, it also jeopardized my life, and I think I have this tendency of putting myself in danger. So it was just me and some Russian guys. We were partying, and we needed more beer. And so it was me and my girlfriend at the time, and we went out to get some beer. And while we were crossing the street, and it was almost midnight, and a car came from a corner, and he didn't see us, and it was a Mexican driver. He was talking on the phone. He didn't see us, and so he ended up hitting us. So we went on top of the roof, rotating multiple times, and we landed on the ground. I felt like my whole body was shattered. I was so scared, and while he hit us, I thought I was going to die. Like, I didn't know if I was under the car or on top of the car. It was hard to tell. So I was lying on the ground, and it felt like I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't feel my body. I thought it was all my bones are broken. I called to the guy. I said, call 911. At least that he could understand. He called 911. And 5 minutes later, 5 police cars arrived and an ambulance car. And the ambulance asked me and the girl, have you been drinking? I said, well, maybe I had a couple beers. That's about it, not too much. And so they gave me a couple of shots. They took me to the emergency room, and they x-rayed my body and everything that I was complaining about. I ended up getting some stitches over here. I still have them. All right, but that was about it, and left the hospital in the morning, and then I received a bill from the hospital, and it was $3,500. And just the fact that the ambulance arrived cost me $500. Well, that's an expensive taxi, I'll tell you that. And I felt like I should not be paying this amount of money, because I felt like, well, this Mexican driver was driving way too fast, and he just wasn't paying attention to the road. He was talking on his phone. It's totally his fault, and they should cover this amount that we should not be paying the hospital. And I felt like they don't take us seriously, because the insurance company kept declining our request to cover the amount. So I went to get some help from a friend of mine. His name is George, and he's a former college professor of communications. And he's a pretty knowledgeable, educated type of guy. And he's like, okay, I'll try to help you. So he called this insurance agency, and he said something like, hey guys, well, let me make it clear to you. I've been living in this city in this town for 50 years, and I know everybody here. And when this court is going to be taking place, I'm going to be sitting there among other people. And just so you know, I know the judge personally, and I'll be looking him directly in the eyes. And the insurance manager said, like, oh, okay, I guess we could settle that. I guess we could, we can find some middle ground. And so they paid the amount, so at least I didn't have to worry about that. So George helped me out big time. I'm so thankful to him. Oh God, so many stories. So I want to tell you about a really interesting job that I had, and it was telemarketing. Now, how I got the job was I attended a job fair, and I had no idea what telemarketing was until that moment that I showed up for work on Monday. And they had a 2-week training for us just to get us prepared and what kind of scripts we were going to be sticking to. And it was, first of all, it was great practice. It's making those unwanted phone calls with people that didn't want to talk to you. And it's kind of it's a great training in communication skills and being rejected and not taking it seriously. It was great. So I was sticking to the script. I remember making the first phone call. I was like, I'm going to make a fool out of myself. What am I doing? I'm calling someone who's not expecting my call. And I was like, hey, this is Slava. I'm calling you with Fairfield Resorts. And it seems like you've stayed at one of our hotels before. Now we're running this like limited time promotion where you can travel. We were selling vacation packages, 3 nights, 2 days, 3 nights for $99. So you could pretty much go to Las Vegas, Nevada, or Atlantic City, New Jersey for the price of $99. Now, the obvious question was, what's the catch? And the catch was, of course, we said there's no catch, but there was a catch. There was a timeshare presentation that you had to attend for 2 hours. And but they said that sometimes people who attended that, they said it could last for 3 and 4 hours, which kind of messed up your a whole day of your vacation. But I was doing that for 2.5 months. It was fun. It was like teamwork. Anybody who made a sale, everybody would stand up and like, give it up for Slava. We just made a sale. Wow. You know, it was like fun, like, I don't know, summer camp, whatever. I made a fool out of myself one time. I was calling this guy who's a Latino, and you know how in Spanish you have this name, Jesus. And so, but I see on a computer it says Jesus. And I'm like calling him, and I said, hey, could I speak to Jesus? And the guy sitting next to me, who was a friend of mine, he started laughing. He's like, oh, Slava just wanted to speak to Jesus. And later I figured out that that's how you pronounce it, Jesus. Okay, but I wanted to speak to Jesus. Couldn't do it. Now I want to talk about Southern hospitality one more time. I made a really cool friend who was vacationing in Pigeon Forge with his family. And you know, we met at the hotel, and he said, hey, you know, you got the language skills and everything, and why don't you come to Dalton, Georgia? It's the carpet capital of the U.S. He said, there are plenty of jobs, no problem, you can stay with us until you figure things out, you know, and there's a few colleges. If you want to go to college, you know, we'll help you out. And I'm like, sure, why not? So I packed my things, jumped into my car, and I was on my way to Dalton, Georgia, which from Pigeon Forge is about like 3-hour drive. So I was in Georgia. And I couldn't get a job at any of the plants, like carpet plants, because I had a certain type of visa which did not allow me to work in that kind of environment. So job was out of the question. But then I wanted to get some American education, so I applied to I think it was one of the community colleges, and I had to pass a math and a language English exams, and I passed them both, but it turned out that I had a J1 visa, but in order for me to go to college in America, you had to have a F1 visa. And I was stupid enough not to go back to Russia and then come back again. I was just like, oh, forget about it. So I'm just going to be making more money, you know. Not a very clever decision. So I gave up on the college idea. The guy's name was Rick, and he was, you know, like a country guy, right? He had his house on a huge piece of land. He even had his own lake. He had a collection of guns. We could be shooting guns.
And got your ears ready?
Yeah. Man, that was loud.
Got to do another one?
Yeah.
Oh, what it's about. Animals understand guns.
Yeah.
I mean, you pull a gun out and everything like that, they go, what's he going to do with that? You want to shoot around?
Yeah, sure.
And he had a lot of cattle, you know, cows, goats, horses, just a lot of things. And we actually visited in 2014, when I was taking my parents to the U.S. to show them America. We stopped by, and we had a good time with Rick, and we're great friends to this day. I think I stayed with his family for almost a month, you know, while I was trying to, you know, figure out things with my employment and the rest, and they were taking me places. It's a really beautiful part of Georgia, Dalton, Georgia. I think it's about 2 hours away from Atlanta.
Turn sideways, stance this foot forward. Okay, like that, both hands will be fine like that, okay?
Okay.
Ready, you see the stick?
Sure.
You see there's a dot right there?
Yeah, I do.
And 2 dots there. That glows in the dark if it's dark, okay? And so,
Well, I'm ready, shoot.
you ready? Yeah.
Let's go
Do
for
it. Do it.
So what's it like driving a muscle car, man?
Hard to stay cranked. My name's Rick Garrett. We're in Dalton, Georgia. Hello in Catherinesburg, is right?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Always great to see Stan and everything. And say hi to Mom and Dad too, okay?
All right.
And sis.
Thanks, dude. Wonderful.
Okay. We'll see you.
Russians in America, and how do we treat each other? So my impression was that Russians try to avoid other Russians for the simple fact that they don't want to be taken advantage of. And I learned this, that, you know, Russians that have already been living in America for some time, and then the newcomers, you know, somehow, I don't know, it's not always that they want to help them. Sometimes they just want to take advantage of them. So it was just kind of my strategy to avoid Russians at all costs. I'm not saying all of them are bad, but a lot of them could not be trusted, which was a very different situation for minorities of the USSR, places that now became independent countries like Armenia, Uzbekistan. I had a lot of friends from like Armenia and Uzbek people. And what I've learned is that they formed diasporas. It's like they stick together. And so when a guy from Armenia comes to the U.S., he's given almost like a list of contacts. If you want to go to L.A., if you want to get some housing, okay, you call this guy. You need a job, you call this guy. He's going to help you out. You go to Boston, you call this guy. But Russians, we don't do that. We're all by ourselves. And maybe Americans are just like us. We're all about, like myself, I don't need any help. I'm going to do it on my own. I don't know. Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a bad thing. But that's what it is. One time, I remember, I had to break up a fight, actually help the police break up a fight between an Uzbek guy and an Armenian guy. They were out there in the street fighting, bloody fight. And so the police came to the scene. But none of the guys, neither of them could speak any English. So the police is like, hey, anybody speaks their language? I'm like, yeah, I can speak Russian. I could probably talk to them. So I helped them, and they broke up this fight, and the police guy's like, hey, we need a guy like you, working for us. I'm like, yeah, sign me up. If you're ready to pay me some money, I'll be working for you. But he said, it's more complicated than that. You're just like a student on a tourist on the summer visa. It's probably not going to be working out. But he said, we could really use your help with that. This program was called Work and Travel for a reason. I talked about working, but what about traveling? One time, me and my Russian friends, we decided to go to Atlanta because it was the closest major city. It was about 4 hours of driving. So we jumped into a car, and it was a one-day trip. We got to see different parts of Atlanta. Atlanta was nice. Took pictures, got some food, got to see everything, the main park, the Olympics Park, what else, the Central Park. It's a nice city. So that was a nice day out in Atlanta. Now, also we decided to make a major road trip all the way to California, visit in Las Vegas, the Grand Canyon, all those nice places going through Texas. And so it's four of us, 3 guys and 1 girl. And we went there in my small car that I bought. It was a Nissan 200 SX SER 2-liter front-wheel drive. And that was a nice trip. I didn't really get to see much of America before then. So seeing California for the first time, it was an eye-opening experience, obviously. And Las Vegas was nice. Took a lot of pictures. I loved it. Oh, actually, it was funny. In Las Vegas, one time I was going in the wrong direction. I mistaken one road for another, so I was going in the wrong direction, and there was a police car, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And so I thought to myself, okay, I could pretend to be a stupid tourist, and that's what I did. They're like, hey, you're not supposed to be going this way because it's a one-way street. And I'm like, sir, I'm completely lost. I'm looking for this hotel, and I just named like one of the major hotels in the area. And he's like, oh, that's what you're looking at. Okay, you got to turn around. You got to go, straight, left, straight. And I'm like, oh, thank you so much. Because we're tourists from Tennessee. And it's like, okay, have fun. And that's how it ended up. Sometimes you got to use your, think outside of the box. Interesting. If you got some questions, go ahead and ask me. And I'll probably make another video of me traveling to the U.S. with my parents. That was, and we could ask them what they thought of America, seeing it for the first time. All right. See you guys later.